Hi everyone, I'd just like to welcome you to our Africa Print and Printing Essay webinar. Thank you for joining us. I'm Megan McCarthy, the editor of Africa Print. I'd like to introduce our guest speakers, Abdul Majid Mohammed, CEO of Printing Essay, Dion Jobert, CEO of Murpac Envelopes and former president of PIPSA, Andrew Reed, Regional HR Manager at Bidbase Data, Print and Packaging, and the current Printing Essay Central Chamber Chairman, Tommy Dusant, CEO of Rainform, and Jerome Morkel, the Managing Director of Tandem Print and former Printing Essay Western Cape Chamber Vice Chairman. Just some housekeeping rules. We welcome your general comments in the chat section. If you have a question for the panelists, please post these in the questions section. And if you have something aimed at a specific speaker, please just specify their name. If you're wanting to ask a question that's already been asked, you can upvote it. Any questions not answered during the webinar will be answered by Printing Essay afterwards. There are also Printing Essay team members who are guests and can answer your questions individually. Let's keep the chat to informal comments, and again, the questions section is for questions. Please also participate in our polls in the polls section that is next to the questions section. So let's get into it. We can start with Abdul Majid. Recently, the DTI announced the partial lifting of the lockdown to level 4, allowing some industries and sectors to come back into service. What has Printing SA done to represent the needs of companies within the manufacturing sector, and by when will the DTI respond to all the submissions?
Thank you, Megan. I think at the outset, I must thank the back office team at Printing SA, who have been hard at work dissecting every piece of new legislation and government gazettes that have been issued over the past 5 weeks. There has been a raft of regulations, and we have thoroughly analyzed each document and extracted what relates to what our member companies really needed. And we have aggressively been sending out at least 2 communications weekly containing this valuable information. The Ministry of COCTA developed a COVID-19 risk adjustment strategy schedule of services document, describing 5 phases of how the lockdown will be lifted. Under level 5, all manufacturing related to essential food production, medical and hygiene supplies, as well as pharmaceutical products were already allowed. Phase 4, which kicks in tomorrow on 1st of May, allows for the partial lifting of some additional manufacturing to start off. COCTA and the DTI have used Stats SA standard classification of industry codes, also called the SIC codes, as a framework through which it explained which sectors would become operational and to what degree in percentages. This document was released on Saturday last week, and the business and industry bodies were given a mere 48 hours to respond. Our team at Printing SA analyzed it, decided to look at our entire value chain of production as it relates to printing, packaging, and signage. So we started off looking at the pulp production from trees from which all paper and boards are manufactured into products that are used by all sectors transversely, be it books, magazines, newspapers, other media, and packaging of all products and signage and advertising used. This entire array of products were categorized into a list of 58 products that our member companies produce. We then married this comprehensive list of 58 products with the SIC codes published and found the following. In Section A, which included agriculture, hunting, forestry, and fishing, the DTI has now allowed logging under forestry to be fully operational in level 4. This means that the manufacture of papers and boards will start up in earnest. In Section C, which is manufacturing, the manufacture of paper and products, as well as the manufacture of packaging as it related to essential products, was already opened up. Now, under level 4, it includes other manufacturing sectors related to our industry, in particular division number 17, which relates to the manufacture of paper and paper products, 18 that deals with printing and reproduction of recorded media, 58 which has published activities like books, magazines, etc., 73 advertising and market research, 74 which concerns other professional, scientific and technical activities, and 82 that covers office administration, office support, and other business activities like stationery, etc. The document risk-adjusted schedule states that the percentage degree to which sectors can start up. Our considered opinion was that now up to 20% is possible from 1st of May, with the exception of stationery that will go up to 50%. Our opinion has been based on the spirit of this document, which states that due consideration has to be given to ensure that the partial lifting will only allow for the slow and phased in of upscaling of operations to get the economy going again, while keeping a focus on reducing the threat, the spread of COVID-19. We therefore responded to DTI, stating our understanding to be 100% for essential services support, 20% for all other manufacturing, and 50% for stationery-related production. We have requested DTI to either confirm our understanding, or if we have misinterpreted anything, to rectify this in writing, which we will then forward to all our member companies. In addition, Printing South Africa has also developed an industry-wide risk assessment industry policy, aligned to both the Department of Economic and Labor's COVID-19 2020 regulation and the Occupational Health and Safety Act. It covers all key elements for companies resuming operations. Companies can use this policy as a tool to internal policy. This document includes what they should have in place in terms of personal protective equipment, masks, sanitizers, how they plan to implement social distancing on the factory floors, and signage that has to be used, and much more. This risk assessment, if carried out systematically, forces detailed planning before operations can resume on Monday. And this document will be available shortly for use from our website. Another challenge for companies scaling up is to consider how many staff are required per machine and whether shift work is possible to avoid too many employees in close proximity to each other. Both the Nerve Center as well as the lockdown comment emails acknowledge receipt of our submission. Minister Patel has also acknowledged receipt of the copy of our submission. We will announce their response as soon as it becomes available, possibly later today. Going forward, we plan to engage more with GTI to make our industry voice heard and to ensure that print, packaging, signage, and the visual communication sector is recognized by the DTI and is consulted whenever the need arises. I'll stop there, Megan, for now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Do any of the other panelists have anything to add? Okay, so I'll move on to the next question. What can print and packaging companies register and apply for in terms of tax and any other financial relief? And have these been effective?
Now, again, for Printing South Africa, since over 75% of our membership company database consists of SMMEs, let me start off with all the different avenues of funding and financial relief available to them. The Department of Small Business Development, DSBA, have a number of agencies geared up to support this vital sector. There is the Small Enterprise Development Agency, SEDA, and the Small Enterprise Finance Agency, SEFA. Information of what they have to offer is on the DSBA website. There is also the SMME Debt Finance Relief Agency, registered with SIPSI, which allows registered small companies debt relief for a maximum period of 6 months. There is also the SMME Business Growth Resilience Facility. Other relief is available from the SA Future Trust, that is the Oppenheimer funded program. In addition to the Solidarity Fund, there is also the Sukuma Relief Program of the Rupert family, administered by the business partners of Remgo, allowing for the 12-month interest-free loan to SMMEs. For the informal sector, spaza shops and the self-employed who are not registered as taxpayers, there has also been some relief measures announced recently. All the major banks and financial institutions have announced relief measures for those in good standing. For larger companies, there is the National Empowerment Fund that assists with financial support for those with turnover between $500,000 to 10 million, and going up to those with to over 200 million. National Treasury and SARS have also announced through the Disaster Management Tax Relief Bill some tax relief measures, which include a skills development levy holiday payment for 4 months, a fast tracking of VAT refunds, a 3-month deferment of carbon tax liability, an increase to the tax incentive amount for those earning less than 6,500 rands per month, some deferment of tax, and a case-by-case application to SARS to waiver penalties that are payable. They have also indicated that for companies with less than 50 million turnover, they can defer 20% of PAYE payments for up to 4 months. Now, your question about whether these have been effective is a difficult one to answer, as it differs from company to company, as each situation is unique. But I think it has to be acknowledged that at least these that I've mentioned are noteworthy interventions to ease the plight of businesses trying to survive in these abnormal and difficult times. Thanks, Megan.
Okay, thank you. I'll move on to the next question if none of the panelists have anything to add. The Minister of Employment and Labour has announced the COVID-19 Temporary Employer-Employee Relief Scheme, COVID-19 TERS, to contribute to the containment of the pandemic. What measures has Printing SA put in place to assist employers?
Printing SA has been at the forefront of trying to make sense of the TERS scheme since it was first announced in early April. From member company calls received requiring help on how to fill in the form, we realized there was a desperate need for an easy step-by-step guide, which was developed by us on the 9th of April. We then added annexures using screenshots to explain how the forms, as well as the Excel template, had to be filled in, as well as how to convert the Excel file into a CSV format, which was one of the requirements. So we gave guidance on what the minimum wage in our sector was, calculated as 3,598 per month, or 28 rands and 76 cents per hour. Then revised legislation was passed, necessitating an updated version, which was released on the 21st of April. We were about to release the third iteration yesterday, but held back due to a new correction notice that was issued. After understanding the implication of this new correction notice, we will then publish our next iteration either today or Monday. Our 4 chamber managers have been at hand to help member companies through this process of how to fill in and what to fill in on the application form. Those assisted were grateful for the assistance rendered. We will continue to help both members and non-members in this regard wherever possible. I think further explanation of how the scheme works will be covered by Andrew Reid, I think, later, so I'll stop here. Thank you, Megan.
Okay, I think I'm just going to jump to some questions that have come through.
Sure.
This is open to all the panelists. So Mark is asking, what are the exact implications for staff over 60 years of age, especially those on production machines?
Shall I deal with that one?
Sure, okay.
The directive from government on the over 60 with comorbid conditions is not an instruction. It's a suggestion that workplaces should be aware of that and offer those employees an alternative to work from home, and instead of coming into the workplace. I think that's the important part. In communicating with those employees, it's a little bit of a difficult one because they're not in the workplace. But when employers approach people to come to work, they should give them sort of a neutral option saying, we are aware that you're over 60, or you may be, in the event that you maybe suffer from a comorbid condition, such as cancer, TB, or anything else like that, and you prefer not to work currently or to work from home, then get in touch with your manager, and then, but keep it neutral so that the person doesn't have to disclose what exactly is wrong with them. So within the workplace, it's critical that you plan your staffing and that you engineer the working environment to ensure that people are not unduly exposed, and follow and put in place sufficient hygiene and cleaning measures to ensure that the workplace remains safe in that environment for them. So you probably find that they have to clean more regularly, wash their hands more regularly, wipe surfaces more regularly, and at all times wear their masks.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Maybe I can direct Mark's second part of the question to you as well. He said, my understanding is that night shift workers don't fall under the new curfew rules, or under the curfew rules. Is this correct?
My understanding is that it would be, that the curfew would be in place for everybody. If there is a relaxation of that, that would probably be accompanied by permits for travel and permits from the employer to work. But it comes with a host of other issues, you know, whether people are actually able to find transport to come to work, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, access control is important at your workplace. So you have to have double the security, you know, normally to hand out PPE and to test people, you know, to scan them for fever and body temperature and all of those kind of things. So there's quite a lot to consider if you want to go that route. My understanding at the moment is that it's not open to night workers.
Okay, great. And then just one more question I'm going to pose for now, again to any of the panelists, is from Nick. He asks, can print shops open on Monday, and what printing restrictions are there? I don't know if you'd be the right person to answer that, Andrew.
The understanding is that print shops can open at their restrictions, but the critical thing is that people need to plan their opening properly. The operation needs to take note first of, you know, what would be the demand. There is a whole lot of hygiene and cleaning procedures that has to be in place before you allow people back on the premises. You have to educate your employees on the standard operating procedures in the workplace, especially in relation to hygiene and care and wearing face masks and cleaning wherever they work and the interaction with other people. So it's quite a lot of work that goes into that. And I would personally, I would think that employees, if they haven't planned yet, that would be the first point of departure. It's pointless bringing all your employees back to work if you only have 20% of your normal demand in the operation.
The other element is also signage, you know, on the floors as well around the machinery. I think that also has to be done. So I think that risk assessment strategy I alluded to is a valuable document for people to actually use and gear up for the opening. So it might be advisable not to start off day one with people on site. Rather, the planning has to happen, you know, properly and thoroughly before we call staff in.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll just go to the next question for you, Abdul. And that is, will there be longer term disruptions and shift in print demand and printer operations? And is there any research to back the trends that may unfold?
Well, most definitely. I think, let me share with you just two research papers produced recently. The first is literally hot off the press, being just released this week, with BMI doing research on an industry strategy as requested by the FPNM CETA. Now, in this phase of the research, they tried to better understand and anticipate the changes in terms of what customers were requiring in terms of print demand. So their three main findings were, number one, digital printing will become more popular, and cost, quality, good customer relations, and shorter lead times will be top priorities. Secondly, employees will continue to have jobs, provided they adapt and change, having to reskill and upskill themselves. And the third one would be the impact of digitization that will result in more integrated partnership and collaboration with digital experts. Future opportunities lay in more online advertising, packaging, stationery and branding, and new product development. Customers are also seeking more integrated print solutions across all media channels. An engaging online presence through an attractive website will draw customers to products and services. The other research was conducted by the Institute of Futures Research from Stellenbosch University for SATU last year. Now, this research identifies 4 forces influencing the printing industry. The first one is changing customer attitudes, with customers being influenced through social media and their networks of what to purchase and from where to get it. Number 2 is changes in the business models and the economy at large. Both insourcing and outsourcing will be used to satisfy customer demands. For more effective B2B or B2C focus, an integrated solution offering will be preferred. Additive manufacturing and the use of 3D printing will come into use. Thirdly, supply and value chain offering is in a state of flux. There is more innovation happening across various substrates, and the links and processes needed. Smart publishing will include intelligent labeling and the use of RFID and QR codes. Augmented reality will be used in advertising, for content development, and in book development to give a richer reading experience. The supply chain will also be more connected and integrated. Fourthly, sustainability will be top of mind. The circular economy covers the 3 core elements of reduce, reuse, and recycle. In addition, sustainable packaging, the reduction of CO2 emissions, and less pollution will be top of mind of consumers who have become more conscious. So I think these 2 research papers show that there will definitely be longer-term disruptions and shifts, and all companies have to take note and start making adjustments to future-proof themselves in order to survive.
Great, thank you very much. I'm just going to go to another question for anyone who wants to answer. Laura is asking, would it be possible to have an indication on the transport of printed material, whether local or in across provinces, and what paperwork is required to ensure the delivery of these? I don't know if this would be something for you, Dr. Abdul-Majid.
Well, I could do something, but I think Dion and the other 2 gentlemen perhaps have more insight into this. I think in terms of exports, if we're talking overseas, I know for the fact that Minister Dlamini Zuma announced yesterday that the ports will be opening up for those manufacturing things that are required for export purposes. Now, I would assume internal transportation as well will be covered, because I mean, there's a specific need for specific products, both essential and now other manufacturing that will be required by other companies starting up. So I think generally, I don't know if there's any specific paperwork that has been requested or that is required, but I think maybe Dion or Jerome or Tommy might be able to share more advice on this particular aspect.
Okay, who can we, Dion, would you like to maybe give more insights on that? Your mic's off. Sorry, and Dion, you're okay, there you go.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, our understanding is that
Yes.
Goods and services will be able to move freely within South Africa and across borders. I think there's so much information coming at us so quickly that we'll just need to be a little bit patient. We need to talk to courier companies and cargo companies to see how they are ramping up. I think, as Andrew said, it's going to be a little bit of supply and demand issue. If there's demand to move things, for example, from Gauteng to Cape Town, I think that it will be easy to do so. I don't think there's going to be permits required for moving goods, as long as you're not moving cigarettes and alcohol. So I think services are going to return as demand improves. I think that will. I think we'll see the transport of goods across the country quite easily.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And then we have another question from Kylie. Do print service printing service providers need to reapply for an essential services certificate for level 4, or is the certificate provided during lockdown level 5 sufficient?
Yeah, I think that previous certificate that was issued is still valid. We can continue.
Okay, great. And then we have, let me just check what other questions there is. Nick's asking a follow-up question about print shops opening on Monday. Can businesses print in general, or are there still restrictions on what they can print?
I think my understanding was that they can all ramp up to about 20% of their capacity.
Okay. Any other panelists want to weigh in on that? Let's see what other questions we have here. I think we'll move to Tommy's questions now. Oh, sorry, Tommy. Tommy, has your company been open during this? Hi there. Has your company been open during this lockdown, and what services have you offered?
Well, Megan, we've been fortunate in a way that we supply a whole diversified range of products to a lot of industry, which include medical, hospitals, banks for their point of sale, and food packaging, etc. So yes, we've been running on a limited staff. We were quite proactive in getting staff scanned for temperature. We had masks supplied and sanitizer and all the hygiene that goes with it. So yes, we've been running, but on a limited capacity basis. Yes.
Okay. And then what are the challenges around supplying an essential service like printing with law enforcement, stock, delivery, and staff?
Well, initially staff was a big problem. I mean, rightfully so, everybody was scared that they were going to contract the virus coming into work. They weren't actually up to date with what COVID-19 is, what the implications are. And I think that settled down more after more facts became available, you know. The stock issue coming from ports with the lockdown, a lot of containers were 2-3 weeks late. So yes, it was difficult, you know. And even when you did get your goods, you had to motivate it with a lot of red tape on why you need the goods. How do you interpret it to be essential items? So yes, it's been a challenge, but it's sort of settled down now by using the CIP certificates that the department has issued. We've seen that the law enforcement agencies will accept it as granted that you are essential services. So all our delivery trucks, we all have copies of our certificates and also certificates of the people we're delivering to. And once you have those documentations, you don't have any problems, right? The biggest fear we've always had is that law enforcement would interpret their own interpretation of what essential services are. You know, it's hard to say what is essential services. If you are printing for a technician who's servicing an X-ray machine at the hospital, is that an essential service, or what is it? You know, so people can interpret certain things for certain things. You know, so yes, I think Doctor, you publishing that list later today or Monday will be very helpful as well. And if we could get more clarity from DTI on that, even better. I think in the printing industry, we are unique in that we are intertwined in most industries. So you could be supplying one industry that's got nothing to do with essential services, but they are supplying essential services to someone in need. So it's all linked up, and it's a knock-on effect for everybody. Staff has been an issue with the taxis, and this seems to have settled down now, and we don't foresee any more problems. However, the staff that are in confined areas could be a problem for most companies, because most companies do not have the extra space to accommodate the social distancing. So I think with machinery it's quite easy. Most printing companies, machinery, there's plenty of social distancing space on machinery. Nobody is too crowded. But when it comes to handwork, you have a whole lot of people in a very confined area. And this will be a challenge for printing companies, is to how to manage the 1.5 meter distance between employees. And if you don't have the extra space, it will be a challenge. Yeah, so going forward, we work on it as and when the need arises. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tommy. I see there's a question from Romano for you. He says, have you seen an increase of demand from your own customers, or do you foresee the demand for May being the same as April?
Well, April has been a disaster as far as our normal turnover goes. We have seen an uptick in point of sale from supermarkets and pharmacies and all these people who are supplying essential services. Could be a knock-on effect of people stockpiling. Not too sure about that, but yes, on the point of sale stuff, there's been a big uptick, and we are hoping that things from May. So yes, April has been a disaster, 90% down on our normal turnover. We have been quite fortunate to have some export orders, so yeah, we're looking forward.
Okay, thank you very much, Tommy. I'm going to move to Jermaine now. Sorry, Jerome. We know the negative financial impacts COVID-19 has inflicted on all companies and individuals. Any advice on what should be focused on when companies reopen for business?
Hi, good morning all. I think for us in our business, I can only speak from a lived experience. We've really worked very hard to ensure the welfare of our staff and of ourselves as leaders in our businesses. I think overall communication is key, and if we haven't already, it is critically important to speak to your staff, your suppliers, your stakeholders and your customers. When it comes to staff, it is really just an awareness that needs to be brought across them on a continuous basis. When it comes to our stakeholders, I think it's practical to get the message across that business will not be the way it used to be. From the reading that I've done, I think it's fair to say that 6 to 8% of the businesses we knew as at the end of November, December of 2019 may not survive to see the same period in 2020. So there's a bit of realism that needs to be translated. I think in terms of our suppliers, if you haven't already, you've got to be talking to them. You've got to be making arrangements. The key acquisition right now is buying time. If anything, we all just need runway to get our processes running again and to get some cash flow running through our business. Like Tommy mentioned, our April was equally disastrous with zero turnover running through our business. So there's a huge amount to make up before we start trading realistically again and moving forward. So From a supplier perspective, keep talking. Possibly, I know there's a good couple of suppliers online, but maybe talk to them about some sort of a settlement discount if there is an inkling of cash flow in your business. Translate the same conversation to your customers. It's ironic that our biggest customers are the ones that are taking the longest time to pay. But we need to break the cycle as best we can. So I prioritize paying as many of our smaller suppliers as possible, because they're the ones that are in survival mode, and then make arrangements with the other bigger suppliers and your supplies of funding for your capex and so on. The banks are open to it. I don't think anybody's going to put you in a negative position if you continue to show a good attitude and a good payment ethic. And I think that's critically important. We have to remind our stakeholders. Some of us are family businesses, some of us are listed organizations, but there has to be a realistic understanding that moving forward, the conditions are going to be very, very tough. We've cut as much of our non-essential expenses as we possibly could. We're driving a lot of lean concepts moving forward. We're pushing as hard as we can to increase productivity. We've introduced a simple concept called the 5% rule. If each and every one of our staff just does 5% more than they did yesterday, that can contribute towards our bottom line. 5% up in speed on machines, 5% up in terms of calls to clients, 5% up on how fast you answer the phone in the first we get back. A whole bunch of little 5%. If they all come together, it's a small action that can have a multiplier effect moving forward. So it's a return to basics. A lot of us run lifestyle businesses. We've got to cut those lifestyle issues out and really start running really tight-fisted businesses. And I can't emphasize more. We have to communicate to everybody in our lives. It's the only way for them to understand our position and to work with us and not against us in creating a better future for our industry.
Thank you very much. I'll go to your next question. There are many small companies that are shut down during this time. What advice can you give on what they can do to be productive? And can you share any examples of those who have innovated and adapted their businesses through lockdown and survived?
Yeah, we're all trying to still survive, so I can't speak for the future. But the kind of things that we've done in our business is to take the time to meet as senior management and to re-strategize, to rethink our business models, do lots of research and exploring opportunities that we maybe would not normally have been familiar with moving forward. So our knowledge base has certainly increased somewhat because of the time that we can afford it to do this. The simple things we've done in our business as well is to activate our sales guys who are all working remotely, get them to clean up databases of their staff, generate new prospect lists for what we can do when we're able to get out into the trenches again and push for more work going through. We've refined a lot of our marketing plans. We've had an outdated website. We've now managed to put a lot of attention on getting a new website up and running, a new marketing initiative, new corporate profiles. It's the little things that we've been using this time for just to ready ourselves for the start. A lot of training has taken place. We've installed a new management information system. And if it wasn't for this breakdown, I don't think we would have fast-tracked the progress we have made so far. So there's been a lot of online engagement, a lot of webinars. Lord knows all our internet costs are off the charts, but it's what we've had to use as the major tool to keep going. A lot of businesses have also just pivoted into other areas, doing things in the PPE space, creating special applications around masks and protective gear and so on. I just have to caution a little bit in that respect that it's not going to last forever, so be careful of the investments you make in that space. I'm very grateful that we've done a lot of investments in last year the rand-dollar exchange rate and our currencies has gone completely out of sync, and it has made the acquisition and the installation of new machinery and technology very, very difficult moving forward. So to all of us, I think we need to harness what we have, and we need to ride out this wave, and really just appeal to our staff to just push and just help us to help them contributing more in our businesses. As I said, it's small little increments that can make a big, big difference in the big scheme of things.
Thank you very much, Jerome. We are a bit pressed for time, so I'm going to move to Andrew. Has the TERS and UIF processes provided relief? And what has been your experiences in this regard?
Thank you, Megan. The first experience I think that probably a lot of people encountered is that the processes were not particularly streamlined and planned properly for submission of claims by employers. That has been resolved, and that by the 24th of April, there were 37,000 companies that have already been paid their TERS money for distribution to their employees. So the system seems to be working well, and it takes about 10 to 14 days turnaround time. The only snag that has popped up is in companies where they have applied. The payments have been made, but the schedules have not yet been submitted, and it's very difficult to judge by a bulk amount as to what is allocated to every employee. So I think a lot of employers are currently working through that to ensure that they get that online. The big advantage of TERS is that it does give, especially at the lower level, give some relief to employees. There's a minimum of 3,500 Rand to be paid, and that applies to all employees that are either not employed or on forced leave, unpaid leave, as well as employees that are only partially being paid. And then it scales up to a maximum amount of 6,700 Rand, which is payable to anybody earning 17,000 Rand and above. So there's some relief, especially for the lower level employees, and I'd encourage all employers to make use of that because it can help you to tide over your business until you can establish what the requirements in the market are and what your demand on the business would be going forward. So just a point of interest is that when somebody is on sick leave, the normal procedures for sick leave would apply. The employee would be subject to the company's procedures for application for sick leave. And when that sick leave in-house is exhausted, they will have the opportunity to apply to the Department of Labour for sick leave benefits. One point of advice that I would give is to say, make sure first what needs to be paid out to the employees before you make payment, just to avoid unnecessary comebacks, unnecessary questions, and a situation where money has not been allocated for an employee and you paid them, and alternative arrangements have to be made.
Okay, thank you very much. My second question to you is, it seems inevitable that some companies will have to retrench and restructure going forward. What advice can you give these companies that may be making these considerations, and how are you as an organization managing the retention and redundancy of staff?
Thank you, Megan. I think very important are some of the points that have been mentioned before by Jerome and by Tommy in what they've done within their businesses to keep the ship afloat during this difficult time. And I think in South Africa, we tend to see retrenchment as the only alternative, whereas there are some opportunities available. So the first step to take would be to consider short time. And short time can take on many forms, such as rotational work, for example, that you have one team working this week, one team working the following week, and another team working the week thereafter. Or you could go to a complete short-time arrangement in your operation where you agree with all your employees to work only 40% of their normal hours, or maybe once the regulations are adjusted, that you could run, let's say, 30% of your staff on 3 shifts, for example, instead of just running a day shift, to ensure continuous production. That, of course, would all depend on demand for your business and for your product. So it's not it's something that you need to plan up front already. The thrust of government, and I think the thrust of all employers, should be to try and keep as many people in the economy as you can, even if it's at reduced income, because the more you spread it, the more you have people active within the economy, and you can make a plan around that. So retrenchment then as a last option, especially at this point in time, probably, because nobody knows exactly what the uptake's going to be and what the upswing of normal business is going to be into the future. You could also, as a last resort, if you might agree with your employees to take a reduction in pay, depending on what the scenario is. Say, for example, work a full day, but reduce their pay at least for an interim period until business normalizes again. So those are some of the things that you can do with your employees. It's important to be aware that where there is unionization in your operation, that you do engage with the union on these measures, and that you consult with your employees about that. Where operations are not unionized, you still need to consult with your employees, as it will ultimately, even if it's for a temporary arrangement, constitute a change to substantive terms and conditions of employment. My experience with the unions has been quite amenable. I think the message has gotten out to everybody, in South Africa and probably globally, is that it is about a time for survival and not a time to demand. They've been very forthcoming and accommodating in looking at alternatives when we spoke to them.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Dion, I'm going to move over to you now. It's very important to be focused on the future. I hear many iterations that the world will be different and we need to do things differently going forward. What does this mean for the printing, packaging, and signing industry, and will it need to change?
Thanks, Megan. I think I got the most difficult question. So what I did early this morning was get out my crystal ball and had a good squiz, but it was rather murky. And I don't think anybody knows what the future holds. But what we do know, and the comforting thing, is that the printing industry over centuries has had to face change and had to deal with change. And it has, and it's been resilient. And I think perhaps that's the message that I'd like to portray to those listening. I think there's some sectors of the printing industry that are going to be better off than others. You may know that I make envelopes. That's quite a tricky segment with the post office that is apparently not opening on Monday. So we talk about supply and demand, and we talk about where pockets of excellence are going to be. Obviously, packaging, some of the new technology, printing. But I think that in this whole scenario, we need to face up to change. We need to understand what our supply and demand is going to be. And if I might just tell you a little bit about our international research and local research from an organization called Two Sides, where we poll members around the world about print and about preference for print. And there's a very strong preference for normal consumers for printed products. People prefer reading printed books. People prefer reading printed magazines. There are a number of initiatives around the world in my particular area of interest, Keep Me Posted campaigns, because essentially many people don't have access to broadband. Many people don't have access to, perhaps those listening today, we take for granted computers and printers and broadband. And I think that where we need to start thinking as a printing industry is in a more collaborative way. Our research last year told us that South Africans are unaware of how important print is. We call it hidden in plain sight. Print is around us, it's everywhere, but we just take it for granted. And I think as an industry, perhaps it's time for us to get together to look at the environmental impact of print, which is remarkably good compared to the ITC industry, for example. The power of print in marketing, which returns higher return on investments. It's about collaboration across marketing channels, print channels. We need to get to the advertisers. We need to get to the young ponytails coming out of advertising school that don't know what print is all about. Their whole lives are digital. So my hope is that this dramatic change will enable us as an industry to come together, to confer, to talk, to share. I think we all try to run our businesses as little islands. We try to do everything ourselves. And it's time that we started talking across different channels, started talking to us. Printing SA is a fantastic vehicle for that. Two Sides is also a fantastic vehicle where we can get research from around the world on the sustainability of print, on the environmental impacts of print, and use those to our benefit. We've been quiet in the printing industry for a very long time around how important the environment is. And people just take for granted you switch on your computer and you send emails. The research that we can share through Two Sides and Printing SA is enormous. If we just sent one less email a day each, we could take the amount of carbon greenhouse gas emissions out of the world equivalent to 3,500 cars. That's just one email less a day. So the ITC industry has an enormous environmental impact. It's cold comfort now where most of our businesses don't have work. Most of our businesses are under enormous pressure, as all of the colleagues have discussed. But it's about coming together, it's about collaborating, and it's about seeing where the opportunities are, and there will be. Sadly, in my view, government is on a 4IR mission. They don't think of print as being important, and I think we need to lobby government. We need to tell government that print is important. Scholastic stationery, printed books, research from around the world tells us how important that is. But we want every child to have a tablet. We want every child to be connected. That's not going to happen when we don't have running water in 3,500 schools in our country. So as a print industry, we've got to stand up, we've got to make a noise, and we have research and we have energized people, and I think it's time for us to come together and give it a blast.
Thank you. That's very encouraging. And I'm going to go to the second question. With level 4, exports will resume. How can companies ready themselves to effect this, considering that disruptions have occurred across the supply chain?
Megan, just before we get there, I saw a question around how safe is it to handle paper. Paper is one of the safest products to handle during the virus. The virus doesn't last long on paper. It lasts for about 3 hours, as opposed to plastics and metals. So in Australia around postal services, which, by the way, was decreed an essential service, as it has been in most developed economies. Post office is an essential service. Here we tend to switch it off because we don't take it seriously, which is another thing we need to make a noise about. But paper is one of the safest materials to handle. So that was a question that I saw. As far as export is concerned, one more thing that I want to talk about hope and the future is Buy South African. I think that for too long we've just allowed printed imports, and it's time that we made a noise about that too. Minister Patel has been talking about Buy South Africa. I know that Abdul Majid has worked hard with Proudly South Africa, and I think we should start using those logos on our work. We're all entitled to do that as members of Printing SA, and I think we should start educating our consumers, our customers, that South Africa can produce and can print textbooks, can print exercise books, can print reading books, and it's time we made a noise about that. Just quickly to exports, I think we've discussed that it's a supply and demand issue. We need to export. Department of Trade and Industry wants us to export, and I think that it's around managing supply and demand. If we have export orders, fantastic. Our exchange rate is great for exports. Not all of us can export, depending what products we're in, but I don't see any concerns about pushing the export product and the supply chain. I think Tommy's discussed supply chain. That seems to be working as far as raw materials is concerned, and I think that that's a great opportunity if we can export part of our production.
Great, thank you so much, Dion. I'm just going to see if there's any pertinent questions. I see here from Candace. She's asking, are foreign employees getting UIF payouts as there is an issue with the applications with passport numbers? I don't know which panelists would like to address that question.
Maybe. Andrew, are you there? Yeah.
You're on mute, Andrew.
Would you like to address?
Mute.
Oh, okay. Andrew, I'm just going to unmute you.
I'm not familiar with all the details surrounding that, but if foreign employees are on work permits and the company is contributing for them, I would imagine that we should be able to claim for them. And if they, some people have naturalized in South Africa, depending on what the scenario is. But where people are not in South Africa on legal work permits, I would imagine that that would present some problems.
Great. Let's just see the other questions. I think we are actually running low on time. Would we be able to get a parting shot from each of the speakers? Maybe just starting with Dr. Abdul Majid, just something encouraging and a parting shot for the industry.
Yeah, I've got a few ideas here. One is that COVID-19 has caused tectonic shifts worldwide, and resulting in the terms BC and AC now coming to mean before COVID and after COVID. Now, the future is not what it used to be, and we're moving into a new paradigm of not new normal, but actually next normal. Distance is going to be coming back with more protectionism from all governments to produce more locally and becoming self-reliant and resilient, something that Dion touched on. How to operate remotely with speed and agility and be quicker to market will become new norms. And the rise in a new contact-free economy will give rise to further e-commerce opportunities, which we need to just look out for. We also need to adapt in order not to die soon. And I think personally, I look forward to this exciting moment as this new world order is born. And it's been ushered in right now. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Tommy, let's go to you.
Yes, I think for most businesses in our industry, it's about survival now. So I would encourage to have a look at your setup and see how you can diversify more, see if you can utilize your equipment to make different products. And also importantly is that industry or your opposition, embrace them and I think treat them as a division of yours. Where there's more collaboration between them, I think we can all survive this together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jerome, let's cross to you.
I believe there'll be a heightened appreciation and a more humble approach to our staff, to our clients, and to our suppliers. It is often said that in the darkest of times, legendary companies are forged and better leaders are brought to the fore. And I do hope and pray that we avail ourselves of this time to use this crisis to get to that point. And be reassured that this crisis too will pass, and we will get out stronger and we'll push on. Cycle of life. So all the best to everybody in the industry and their families. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Andrew?
I think a lot has already been said, but I think what is very important for us all is probably just the fact of bearing a full perspective on what is happening currently and what has happened in the past. We don't know the future, but it's sure that there's a new order coming, and we need to work accordingly. But if we look at the last century, for example, and you look at what people have lived through, and 2 world wars, the Depression, the Spanish flu, many other disastrous events that have occurred, and you look at us being 20 years into the new century, I think it's proof enough that humans are resilient and flexible and adaptable and creative in making the environments work. So best of luck to everybody out there, and best wishes to all our members from the world.
Thank you, Andrew. And Dion, will end with you.
A lot has been said. I think a colleague of mine said to me the other day, a crisis like this brings out the best in people and brings out the worst in people. I think it's time to be kind. It's time to collaborate. It's time to talk. Be kind to each other. Be kind to our staff. Be kind to our suppliers. I think there's a lot of information, just a promotional punt, twosides.info. Have a look at the website. There's a lot of work. We're not alone in this. It's happening around the world. There's a lot of information that we as printers in the printing industry can glean from that website. But yes, good luck to everybody. Thank you for listening. Thanks to the colleagues. And be kind. Be nice.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to thank everyone for taking the time to join us today. I see there have been a lot of questions about whether this webinar will be emailed. The replay link will be emailed to you. And you can also look out for an article summarizing the main trends along with the replay link in our africaprint.com webinar. Thanks again to the panelists for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. And thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Right.